Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules Podcast. And today I am joined by Darrian from Qualify. So, Darrian, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Now, you're based across the pond, as many of our guests are now so it's unlikely that some of our kind of UK audience will have come across you or your business. So it'd be really good if you could give us a little introduction to yourself and a little bit about what your business does.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's super cool that we live in a world where I can, talk to you face to face super easily. But yeah, I'm based in Indianapolis, Indiana. My team is remote. We're based here in the States. We have most of our folks here in the Indianapolis, Indiana area and throughout different states in the US. But our company is Qualify, qualifi.HR, and we're really focused on the problem of the phone screen and making that a more faster, more efficient, and more pleasant experience for both recruiters and their candidates. And so we have a platform that allows recruiters to pre-record questions, automate and structure their interviews, and send those out at scale, and let candidates still respond over the phone at their own convenience, and capture those responses for recruiters to listen back to.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. What's your background though? So there must be a reason why you've kind of built yourself a kind of a screening and HR platform. Is your background in HR and in staffing and recruitment?
Yeah. So what I tend to hear, I'm sure you hear the same things from a lot of folks, is that they kind of just stumble into this world. It's not something they set out to do. And that's definitely the case for me. I think the intersection for me is just always being entrepreneurially minded. I think that's kind of the genesis. But in terms of getting into the world of HR and recruiting, it started at my last company where I didn't have the title of recruiter. I was the vice president of a fast growing company, the co-founder and the CEO co-founder. He was the one that brought me on as employee number one. And we hired for a lot of functions except for internal operations. So it kind of left me to be the one-man ops team, doing finance, doing all the general legal admin stuff. And then for at least our first 40 hires or so, the HR and recruiting function fell on my plate as well. And so that's where I, learned the most. Well, not necessarily the most, but that's where I, got my first look into the world of HR, and started to, sense these pain points for myself that led me to wanting to solve at least one of them, and what became Qualify. Yeah.
And do you have a kind of a background in technology? Is that where this kind of creating being a recruiter is one thing, picking up phones and kind of doing that kind of part of the business and screening people and looking through kind of CVs and resumes, but then going as far as building out an actual kind of technology platform to kind of handle that. Was that just, we just had the idea, or do you even get involved in the programming and stuff? Is that kind of, how deep do you go?
Yeah, I go, I won't say surface deep, that might be a discredit to myself, but what I tell people, especially recently, I've come to really appreciate the power of teams. So honestly, none of this would have been possible without originally my co-founding team. So I started this with my brother. His name's Devin. He and I are both not technical. So for a while, it was just us trying to sell a dream, sell an idea, like literally that, like drawing up sketches, writing, documenting things, talking to potential customers and just getting their feedback. And that was it for a while. And we were scrapping to figure out who can help us with this. And we found our two co-founders who are actually on the technical side. So they've built really the core of the product. And then over this year, we started to be able to hire more people on the team. So we have our engineering team has grown, as well as our overall team. And so I like to tell people that I can take a little bit of credit for the idea, but beyond that, it's been everyone else just executing in, staying to the course and really understanding our customers really well.
Hey, listen, the audience here is probably quite fresh to you. So you could have said anything, really. You could have said you put the whole thing from scratch yourself, right?
Right. Yeah, probably wouldn't leave the UK, hopefully.
But it sounds like a really kind of interesting product. But it poses a couple of questions, which we're going to kind of discuss today. So the first thing is how do you how do you kind of blend that kind of human and technology kind of based kind of screening experience? You talk to a lot of recruiters and they'll say that, it is predominantly a face-to-face, a person-to-person, people by people kind of scenario. So how do you kind of blend those kind of two processes?
Yeah. First of all, I have so many opinions on, obviously I'm biased in terms of what I'm putting out there into the world. But I have so many opinions around that notion. But in terms of how we do it,
Feel,
because
feel
we do
free to
know
challenge
that.
them, Darren. If you, I mean,
Yeah,
go,
no,
go for
like,
it.
so that
Tell
is
us.
one of the, yeah, that's one of the, I wouldn't say objections, but one of the hesitations that we get is like, oh, I can't have the back and forth dialogue, or I can't have these one-to-one conversations with people. And what I would like to argue is that yes, those human interactions are important, which is why we try to incorporate them in the product, which I can outline here in a sec. But um, you have to think about the trade-offs in terms of uh, the inefficient processes, the lack of speed, and the inconvenience for candidates, and how that can negatively affect the overall candidate experience and actually create drop off, which puts you further and further away from your best hires if you're not able to really scale your output and have, like I said, people are trying to have these really engaging conversations with people and create these human experiences. But then if they're not able to, coordinate well, if they ultimately lose candidates because they're taking too long, and those candidates get other job offers, or they just miss out because their best candidates get hired faster, then is that really helping you?
Mhm.
But at the same time, what we've learned is that recruiters really do care about what their candidate experience is like, and they want to make sure that they're not putting candidates off by introducing new technology such as ours. And so the way that we talk about that is actually scaling the human touch, because it's the recruiter's voice. We help them when we sign them up. We help them understand how to record these questions to make it more engaging, to be able to weave in their story, weave in more information about the job. And at the end of the day, the voice that the candidate hears is a real person, and it's the person that they most likely will talk to next in the process. It's just a matter of making it more convenient for that candidate, so that the way they can get them there a lot faster. And so we've really gotten great feedback on both sides. Candidates enjoy the experience. It's more comfortable, more convenient to them. And then recruiters are able to actually hear a lot of personality in terms of when these responses come back. There's not a loss of, personality and that human sense that comes through on the other end.
Um, but there must be some candidates that kind of find this a bit kind of uncanny and a bit kind of a bit of a jolt, kind of speaking to. I mean, it's surely it's kind of it's obvious it's not the actual recruited end, it's recorded. So there must be some kind of drop off. And if there is there a kind of a demographic of certain types of people, kind of age groups, or kind of seniority within business that are more susceptible to kind of going down this route and using your kind of technology? Is there differences that you can see within the kind of the users?
Yeah, so we haven't gone into depth in terms of analyzing that sort of data yet. But generally speaking, the workflow is set up so it's really easy to use. Anecdotally, we've gotten feedback in terms of all generations, all different walks of life being able to use it. We give options for accessibility purposes, or like if they need accommodations and they can't take the interview for some reason, allowing them to alert the recruiter of that. But anecdotally, I was going to say one of my favorite bits of feedback is via a recruiter. One of their candidates made sure to tell the recruiter to tell us that, quote, a boomer used it and it was really easy. So great job. And so it was really cool to hear that. And so that's one thing people, it's not a common objection or something that comes up often, but people do wonder, like, if their population or their candidate profile is like less tech savvy, will they be able to use it? And honestly, that's why we do things the way that we do, is because it happens over a standard phone call. There's all different types of interviewing platforms out there. A lot of them are like video and web based, and they require a little bit of one, access to that technology, a little bit more know-how. With us, it's you'll receive an invite, click this button to read instructions, type in your phone number, or your phone number will already be there, and then hit start. And then our system just calls your phone directly and you pick up and answer questions. And it's very similar to responding to like a voicemail prompt. And so we try to make it, that was the thing from day one. One of the things that I wanted to make sure was like, I don't want you to have to log into anything. I don't want you to have to download anything. It should happen over something that's really seamless and easy to use. And so we try to make it that way.
It's interesting you brought up kind of video as well, because I think that would be the thing that probably would get thrown at you as well. It's like in this day and age when we're in a world of videos and, you know, we're recording this over Zoom, and that everybody seems to be kind of handling kind of video interviews, and there's platforms for, you know, where does your technology kind of fit into that? You know, is there, I mean, I'm sure you're going to say there's an advantage to kind of doing it phone based over kind of video based.
Oh yeah.
But
told you I'm biased.
But there is kind of video scheduling, interviewing type tools out there. I know we have them in the UK. So what's the argument for kind of using kind of a phone based into kind of sort of doing it over, you know, Zoom or something like that, or whatever video platform they might be using?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit. So one of the things that we learned and now really focus on is the kind of candidate types, industry types. In our focus, our big thing, our kind of calling card is like the fastest phone interview. And that's really relevant to certain, it's really relevant to like, honestly, all industries, but especially those that are high volume, high turnover, where you're going through a lot of candidates and trying to make a lot of hires in per month. And so that's one advantage that we found, is that making it happen over a phone call and minimizing the barriers to entry leads to faster response times, and ultimately you can get more candidates through the process a lot faster. But what we're hoping to prove, since this is usually a relatively new way to interview people, we're starting with that industry, and we're hoping to prove out other value propositions beyond speed, beyond efficiency, and getting more and more into like the quality of hire, helping to minimize bias in the review process, like removing the visual layer altogether, and other features that we can incorporate. I think we'll go a lot farther and start to unlock some opportunities for folks outside of those types of industries.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I was going to say this must appeal to the kind of volume kind of recruitment market where you've got a lot of people to interview at any one time. And you know, one of the questions is faster better? You know, I mean, it kind of, I think we can kind of get caught up in this sometimes. A lot of bits of technology we kind of deal with, it's about kind of being faster and faster. And it's like, well, is faster actually better? And it's interesting that you kind of brought this up, that it may be and maybe not, that you're already kind of thinking about the kind of next iterations of Qualify that are kind of based on quality instead of speed. So maybe you can kind of talk around that kind of those kind of thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think over the general side, like the for broad strokes purposes, I would say faster is better in recruitment. Without rushing things, without, being able to still make, I'll caveat it just to cover my bases. But, I played basketball growing up, and there's like kind of a famous quote. I'm sure it's relevant in other sports, but be quick, but don't hurry. I'd say it's kind of like that, where you want to be able to have high efficiency, but still be able to make quality decisions throughout that process. And so, but the argument for speed is, one, in economies like we're in now. We actually started Qualify pre-pandemic, leading up to the pandemic. And before that was, at least here in the States, like one of the lowest unemployment time periods. And so the pitch that we were trying to make at that point was, speed is everything. Your best candidates, if you just think of that, generally speaking, they're going to be more sought after. They're going to get hired faster. And so your advantage or your potential advantage is being able to move faster than would-be competitors, beating them to the punch and still being able to make a quality decision throughout your process. And that still is relevant today, when, in some cases, a lot of our clients still receive a lot of applicant flow.
Mhm.
And we've heard over and over again how, they might schedule a candidate, and by the time that day comes, that candidate's already made another decision, already taken another job, or something happens and they just don't show up to that call, or a lot of things can happen.
Yeah.
And so speed, efficiency, making things convenient is crucial. But yeah, in terms of the quality side of it, I think what I'm hoping is to not lose on the speed, but being able to provide more and more insightful information with what we do, since we have the ability to now capture. People don't usually capture rich information in their phone interviews,
Mhm.
and I think that there's a lot of valuable information that people are missing out on. And so what we're hoping to do is, now that these are being recorded, being able to help analyze, provide insights, and help people make those better, decisions that they would have a harder time, or just we're doing more in a subjective manner before, helping them be a little bit more objective is the
Um,
goal.
That's interesting. So, what is it you think that recruiters are kind of missing when they're on kind of phone calls now that you can kind of pick up on?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different tools that are coming into like the world of Zoom and meetings and things of that nature. But right now, the common way that we kind of showcase this is like during a phone interview. A lot of times, the way that you're capturing information is by trying to scratch down notes, type things out. You're not fully engaged in it. And then also, if you're not recording it, that moment's gone, and all you have to go off is your notes. And then you're passing those notes off to a hiring manager who has to look at the resume and decipher this information that you scratched down, and try to decide to, is it worth their time to meet with this candidate, or what's the action step there. And so already with what we provide now, hiring managers are able to equally be involved in that hiring process at that same step that the recruiter is, without messing up their schedule and their time availability. But capturing that information, I think that there's things that we can start to surface and start to analyze and make more available for the recruiters and for the hiring managers to utilize, beyond just what's visibly there or what they're listening to.
And does that include things like understanding kind of voice stress and kind of things like that could, I mean, I know of a couple of bits of technology that can pick up on that and apparently can tell you if the person on the other end of the phone is maybe lying or is under stress or is maybe exaggerating. Is that the route you could see yourself going, or is that just all a bit too Big Brother?
Yeah. So like, I'm speaking in a lot of generalities because
I know you probably
I
don't want to give
am.
away. You don't want to give away too
Oh
much.
no, well, partially that, but partially that, partially one. It's we're starting this undertaking now, but the bigger one is that I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of things in the world of AI and machine learning. I think, especially in recruiting and in HR, it gets thrown out as buzzwords quite freely, and it sometimes is not real. Sometimes it can do more harm than good. And so I want to take I want us to be really practical and thoughtful in our approach, because one of the big things that we care about is diversity. And I know that is one of the key problems that AI can potentially introduce. If you have, biased algorithms, then it can produce biased outcomes. And so what we're trying to determine now is like, what is the best methods for really making decisions and trying to incorporate those in the product in really logical, thoughtful. And a big thing for me is like explainable ways. I don't want to just say like, we use AI and we use machine learning, without actually being able to explain the process to our recruiters so that they feel comfortable as well. Because that's real. Like, if there's things making decisions on their behalf, potentially, they have to be really, really comfortable with what's actually happening behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree as well, right? There is a lot of those kind of buzzword bingo where kind of AI and machine learning, and it's not actually any of those things. It might just be some sequences and things like that kind of in the
Like
background,
if this and that stuff.
if it's in that kind of scenarios when it isn't at that, and that's not AI. and people kind of making money off the back of that. It's interesting. You picked up one of the subjects we talk about a lot on the podcast, which is diversity and inclusion. And it would be interesting to kind of hear kind of how your kind of product works around that now, and how that can be affected, or how it can influence or not influence, and how it can help recruiters take that into consideration. Which, that would be really interesting if you'd hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, what I tell people is that this is not the thing that we are leading with in the conversation. Early on, like we're trying to discover like where's our lane, and we found that lane in helping to improve really the bottom line, the efficiency, and the speed at which people can move through the process. Over the next couple of years, though, that is one of the big areas that I think we have a major opportunity, not only because it's become more relevant for companies, and companies are putting a greater investment and more importance in that space. But also, like, we want to just live that out. Like I said, like internally, that is one of our, pillars and values, but I think we can live that out through the product. And right now it's just kind of inherent to the nature of what we do. It's audio based, so there's no visual component. It's structured in nature, so every candidate is going to get the same exact questions, asked the same exact way. And so it allows for more objectivity compared to other, just like a live standard phone call. And so it allows you to compare candidates more on an apples to apples basis, as opposed to, a live conversation can go a variety of different ways. You might, ask the question, you could even ask the same question in a slightly different way, use a different word, and it changes the whole meaning of the conversation. And so it makes it a little bit difficult to compare those candidate responses. And so with us, it's, again, standardized, structured, same order, same questions, same recording. And that's the way that we do it. But I think there's more features that we can layer on top of that enhance that and make the review process even more, or I guess even less biased in nature.
Yeah. Because one of the things that kind of immediately kind of comes to mind is if someone has a speech impairment, then how does, it probably happens quite rarely, but how does that work in that scenario? Then there probably is a situation where, you've got to kind of bypass your product, and kind of go in the other direction and go do it face to face, basically.
Yeah, I think that I think that's definitely true. I think that there are limitations to really every interviewing type, and but to the best of our abilities I think there's a lot of things that we can do, even down to, in that case, like we've heard like accents as well. How does that play? And I think that there's things, because we transcribe the audio as well, so I think we can, certain cases focus more on the transcriptions and what's being said there. But yeah, no, there's definitely limitations in every format: video, audio, live. There's going to be those limitations, and just in general, hiring people is hard, and not a perfect science at this point.
And it's interesting you bring up kind of accents, because I was going to ask about where do you is the system at the minute just in English, and can you deal with other languages and things like that? Because that's always some of the kind of the possible kind of growth, kind of drawback
opportunities.
Sometimes it's kind of like, we want to do this in German, or we want to do this in Japan, or we want to do this in South America, and then suddenly it becomes all these tech businesses sometimes have to kind of rewrite from the ground upwards, because there's subtleties in those kind of languages that you just can't pick up on. So is that in your roadmap, or do you do that already, and how does that work?
Yeah, we actually do. We haven't had a ton of clients that had this need, but we've had at least one, and it like forced us to build out some of the back-end infrastructure to be able to, at this point, all of the candidate facing text can be translated into that native language, and we can route the calls to international phone numbers, and really the only need then at that point is someone to record the questions in that native language, which usually if you have that need to recruit internationally, you have somebody on your team that is already recruiting and they can record those questions, or we could hire, voice talent to record those questions. And so, yeah, we've seen that as like a long-term opportunity for sure to start to expand internationally, especially in the world that are the industries that we operate in. I think that is a huge opportunity for sure. And I've always kind of envisioned like the potential of two-way like translations to where you might not understand another language at all, but still be able to, through the transcriptions, interpret what that candidate was trying to say.
Yeah, so that's when you do get into some kind of tricky AI, right? At that
point.
Right. One of the other things that we obviously we speak a lot to kind of HR tech providers, and there's always this need to eventually at some point is connect to other systems, connect to recruiters' own kind of ATS systems and CRM systems and things like that. And I assume you're kind of in the same boat, that you've probably got kind of connections with the others, so you can kind of store the data from the recording next to someone's kind of record in a database and things like that.
Yeah. So we've already done some integrations just natively, and actually over 2022, a big initiative for us is to do a lot more. The cool part is out of the box, it's really powerful, and people don't necessarily have to integrate to get a lot of value. They can invite people one at a time, or they can, through bulk uploads, send out up to 500 invites in a single click of a button, and then we make it really easy to manage that when it comes back in. But it is important for a lot of recruiters, especially of a certain size, that it works with their systems, that they don't have to log into multiple tools, manage data syncing and all that sort of stuff. And so integrations are huge, and we want to put a lot of work into that.
I tell you what, Darren, it's been an absolute kind of pleasure talking today. It's been great to kind of understand the history of the business, how and what you guys do, and a little bit about kind of the future of Qualify and your opinions on some parts of the kind of recruitment space, because I think we kind of share some of the same opinions. We will obviously include all of your details in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you directly, they can, and they can also kind of visit your website. But for now, Darren, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. And if you ever want to get into the recording of questions game, would love your voice on our platform.
Cheers.